I guess this is a microphone, I should use it.
Yeah.
Hi. Can you hear me back there? Yeah. I'm going to read a poem published in the Sewanee Review, because that seems right, thanks to my fellow poets. This is a sonnet. It's also one sentence, the whole thing, which is a kind of formal challenge. I was inspired just by a glimpse of a man that I saw driving through a village in Crete, on the way to Panermo. As for the impossibility of being here, I think of the old man limping ahead of me in the village today, a huge bag of lemons in one hand, an olive wood cane in the other. How he stopped once, then again to look over his shoulder, as if hoping to remember why moments ago he dressed and left his balcony with the belief they were, these heavy lemons, something he needed, saying, open your eyes, saying, so much is already behind you, cured inside its rind, and yet leave anyway. It is already February, and know the almond blossoms have opened their wounds to the sun, each blossom an awareness specked with blood. Oh, shucks. This book, Driving the Beast, is super dark. Refugees, immigrants, political collapse, democracy going to hell. I'm not reading any of those poems. But I should tell you that the book goes back and forth between Greece, where I spend a lot of my time, and Wisconsin, where I grew up. And so I'm going to read a Wisconsin poem. If you grow up raised by Norwegians, redneck Norwegians in Wisconsin, you are expected from a very young age to hunt deer. This was not for me. I was much more interested in hunting library books. But it was something you did. It was a ritual that you participated in. This poem's called Whitetail Theology. I should probably mention, I think the poem says something about this. My father was what we would now call an opioid addict. We didn't have a word for what that was, but he got addicted to pills in med school, and it turns out that defined the terms of his life and somewhat this poem as well. Whitetail Theology. In late October, early in the rut, I'd heave up to the highest branches and wedge myself between two wings of oak, then grip my bow, try hard to stay still. Nothing made that easy, neither the cold nor the stampede of raw desires that threatened to trample my boredom. What made it worse were the ghosts who'd hunted here before, the family line, generations who stalked these woods, its granite pinnacle, looking for deer. How little I cared about shooting them. Well before dusk, my father would leave to stomp a 3-mile arc behind the wind, forgetting his damaged hip. And for now, even the brown bottles of pills he racked like ammunition in the black lunch pail he hid beneath the blanket in his car. Instead, he'd steer the deer from their grass along the muddy banks of Blue Mounds Creek, then run them up through scrub to where I sat. The shame he carried, I could not forgive. And yet, after those hard hours of hiking, when he'd find doe or even a spike buck pulling clover right under my tree, and I wasn't asleep, but reading a book, he'd say nothing. We were not eloquent like that, not with our disappointments. The deer would raise tail and run, we'd drive home. As Greek myths go, there are few good fathers. Sons are abandoned on barren hillsides, left to starve. Others are simply devoured, gore for the monsters who engendered them. And Zeus, a flagrant serial sadist. At best, men are titans for a few hours, small gods who stride beside the ancestors to lift us, where they can, from chariots into bed, setting all our weapons aside. And though he must have held him in his arms, that boy who lost his wings, the boy who fell, Not even poor Daedalus could save his son. No wonder I could not save my father. A poem forthcoming in Swim. Yeah. Did I say swim?
Yes.
That would have been
Swing. Excuse me. Did I say swim?
Yes.
I even wrote swing right here, and I know about swing. Can we have a moment of applause for not swim but swing? Jeez. Yeah. More beer, please.
No worries.
Whenever I'm not teaching or writing poetry, I tend to be in the kitchen. There's nothing sexier than a wooden spoon and a boiling pot of water. If you've ever made gnocchi, those little potato and pasta dumplings, completely maddening. Even a very good chef fucks it up half the time, and they're horrible, but when they're good, they're good. This poem's called Gnocchi. For breath to enter, hands must wait. Hold nothing till the water boils. The patience of a wooden slab, the purpose of a heavy pot. Then an egg warmed up in the palm, but no real measurement of flour beyond what the potato wants. After a week of snowmelt, fog, it wants so much today. You must guide the arrival of enough. Borrow some steam from the water. Make thickened air more than a dough. The salt, the hand, the touch, the board. What yields willingly and what holds. A finger weight rolled off the fork. Window of butter, leaf of sage. Last poem. I'm only reading 4, but you gotta hang on for this one. And there's some audience participation at the beginning. How many of you ever worked as a waiter to try to put yourself through the world? That's fewer waiters than I usually get in an audience full of poetry reading. Usually it's unanimous. How many of you can fly occasionally in your dreams? More flyers than waiters. That's fascinating. My brother confessed to me some years ago at Christmas, I have recurrent anxiety dreams about waiting tables at the Hatchcover restaurant in 1988. And I said, describe it to me. And he described my exact anxiety dream. And I think this is the anxiety dream of all waiters. We'll test this out. There's a James Merrill poem that begins, again last night I dreamed the dream called Laundry. And when I read that first line, I said, this is good. I know what my first line's going to be. White Zinfandel, for about 15 years, was the only wine anyone wanted to drink. This is kind of a psychedelic, meandering. I promise it ends up somewhere. And I gotta dedicate this to Chelsea because you enacted the nightmare that one of the nightmares I talked about in this poem. Second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Where there's not a page.
White Zinfandel. Again last night, I dreamed the dream called Waiter. Not the one where I arrived to give a poetry reading, but have forgotten to bring any books. So I'm told by Leanne, just improvise. We have a patient audience tonight. Or in more hellish versions, improvise while accompanied by a harp. No, in the dream called Waiter, I am the only waiter, and thus the only chump in khaki pants and a sea blue polo emblazoned with a schooner. The restaurant quickly fills with people whose thirst for White Zinfandel can never be sated, not even by death. In the dream called Waiter, I should have mentioned it is forever 1988, and Table 11 is calling for more bread. Table 11 wants to order. Table 11 wants another little cup of that delicious drawn butter. And when I come to Table 11, a smudged napkin wilting on my forearm, and finally land their overcooked steaks, they move like a pack of feral dogs circling a freshly shampooed dachshund and a kitten. But in the dream, called Waiter, I neglect the other tables, whose numbers begin at 1 and stretch beyond 11, at least as far as Milwaukee. Do you see how hungry they are? So many we will run out of White Zinfandel soon. The hostess is nervous at her nautical pulpit, a tarnished copper binnacle, a word the dream remembers, and ship's compass. Hot plates are piling up on the line, but first I must fetch ranch dressing from the walk-in cooler, Table 11. And the journey through the kitchen is very long, the really dreamy part of the dream called waiter, since back there in the Dionysian crannies of the restaurant's brain, beautiful waitresses are snorting cocaine off the patron's credit cards. And the kid who washes, true story, and the kid who washes dishes, that was me, is slurping up the scallops. Table 11 sent back, but more whites in, please. And the manager is giving all the chefs raises, just joking, since he heard 2 of them dropped acid will be for peeling shrimp this afternoon. And have you ever peeled shrimp on acid? Now that's a job as fascinating gets. But I am a waiter in the dream called waiter, the only one, and instead of peeling shrimp or getting ranch, I go outside with Jake to help with the garbage, which really means to smoke weed from a carrot he carved just for that purpose. Yeah, those who know, know. And then I am striding away from the restaurant completely, past the apartment buildings stacked up like plates along the lake, and looking for my car, which I parked somewhere around here, when Ashley, the aerobics teacher, walks up, who I have wanted to kiss, apparently, since 1988, and who is suddenly willing. And like so many dream kisses, it is both delicious and disconcerting, never quite over, just trailing off in some slobbery way like Ashley, who has suddenly fled. But at least now, I am able to fly, wheeling above the cul-de-sacs in ways that feel quite natural, just the merest paddling, sailing the warm currents above Middleton, Wisconsin with its cut grass and lake algae smells, and spying, thanks to all the flying, my lost car. A 67 Pontiac Star Chief with a license plate that reads, yummy. And getting in, and wondering where I left my keys, which means in the dream called waiter, remembering I am a waiter. Remembering Table 11 and their implacable thirst, not to mention all those lozenges of broiled cod and pucks of meat waiting for me, some poor guy with an empty briefcase, going everywhere and nowhere in this dream and the other dream called poetry, knowing the ship's wheel never actually spins on its nail above the top shelf at the bar, and as in some restaurants and in most dreams, the compass at the door is only decorative.